What's up, everyone? Reign of Iron here with another review, and today we are reviewing a game that I've actually been very excited for, and I'm sure a lot of us have been, and that is, of course, Marvel's Spider-Man. And I'm just going to say this right now, this game is amazing. It really is. I actually took extra time playing this game before doing this review to see if I could find anything actually wrong with it. And the funny part is I really couldn't. This game is almost perfect when it comes to your standards of a superhero or a Spider-Man game. And there are a few little nitpicks and problems with the game right now, but we're gonna get into that. So, you know, I love the game's presentation. The game looks beautiful. It makes New York come alive. It makes New York look amazing. Spider-Man looks amazing. The graphics, just in general, they're gorgeous. And that's almost one reason right there just to go out and get this game is the graphics. But we're going to talk about that, so let's get into this review. And the first thing I want to talk about is how the game opens up, how the game starts. The game starts, and it basically is kind of letting you know that you're going to get to look inside of Spider-Man's daily life. What is Spider-Man doing at home, what Spider-Man do as Peter Parker, and what does Spider-Man do as Spider-Man? Well, as Spider-Man, of course, he fights villains, he fights thugs, and as Peter Parker, he lives a normal life. He pays his bills. He tries his luck with the ladies. He's a normal dude when he's Peter Parker, and when he's Spider-Man, well, he's Spider-Man. But this review is going to look into some of the good things and a few of the bad things that Spider-Man does, and then I will give you my final review rating, which, like most people, is usually based between 1 out of 10 and 10 out of 10. And so let's get into this thing. Alright, let's talk about one of the most important things about a superhero game, and that is, of course, the combat. How does the combat play in this Spider-Man game? Well, I'm happy to tell you that even though the combat in this game is a lot like the Arkham City combat, or the Arkham franchise combat, I should say, it's actually a lot better in a lot of ways. It keeps it interesting. It keeps it innovative. When you're fighting against people, it gives you different types of enemies to fight against, and each different type of these enemies have a different way that you have to approach to defeat them. And then you can even get really creative with it by throwing things at people, by web slinging people, and then even web slinging people and then throwing the people. It's actually funny, Some of the things you can do in this game is very Spider-Man-ish, very, very superhero-like, and I really like that. That was one of my worries going into the game, was that the combat was going to be too repetitive, because I'm actually not that big of a fan of the Arkham games because I feel like the combat was too repetitive. I mean, yeah, as Batman you can be creative too, but as Spider-Man, I feel like you have more freedom as fighting the crooks and the villains. And there's just so many different ways that you can approach each conflict. And I think that right there is really the selling point to this game almost, is the combat in its own right. Can be probably the most funnest part of the game at times. Sometimes, when you're fighting people and they start gang beating you and it feels like you can't get a word in edgewise with your fists. Sometimes, you might feel like you're being overpowered, maybe you're not strong enough, but there's always a way to beat every single villain and every single conflict, and there's always creative ways to do it as well. And I love the combat in this game. I think it's so much fun fighting people as Spider-Man. And Spider-Man has this ability where he can heal himself if he gets hurt too much, which I also like. Now, unfortunately, it's time to talk about one of my gripes of the game, probably really my only problem with the game, and that is the QuickTime Events. There are quite a few QuickTime Events in this game. They can get kind of repetitive at times. They're not bad, but at the same time, you're going to be doing a lot of QuickTime events when you're trying to stop cars, pulling people out of cars, and there's a few other QuickTime events as well. But it seems like every single time you're in the car chases, you're trying to stop the car, you get the same couple animations, and then you have to button mash a certain button, and either the car will fall on you or it won't. And if it falls on you, you get hurt. Not a big deal, but it's one of my little gripes of the game. Now let's talk about the mini games that are in this game. Some of them are actually fun and challenging, which I enjoy, and they're also rewarding. You have, like the circuit board minigame and the color scheme minigame where you have to line up these lines, and then of course, right out of the Batman Arkham series, a sound minigame. And they're a nice distraction, in my opinion, from the regular game, running around kicking enemies' butts and slinging around the city, which I don't get bored of, but some people might want a distraction from that at times. And it is a nice distraction to play some of these little mini games to tweak your brain a little bit, because some of them are actually pretty difficult. And the next thing I'm going to talk about after that is, of course, the thing that leads right into the mini games, which are the collectibles and the new suits you can get, the rewards from doing these mini games. And there are a lot of collectibles in this game, and some really cool suits in this game too. I found myself enjoying the exploration of the city, looking for these collectibles, trying to unlock some of these suits, trying to do different things in order to earn these suits. And there's a lot of different types of collectibles in this game, from such as things from Peter's past and things that he has gotten from defeating certain villains, as well as being able to go high up, almost like an Assassin's Creed style, and take pictures and earn monument tokens and get a rough idea of what the city looks like. And it's just beautiful the entire time you're doing it. I honestly think this is probably my favorite thing about the game, is the exploration, looking for these artifacts, finding these cool monuments, and earning these new suits. Leveling up in this game is also a joy. I didn't feel like it was repetitive at all. Every time I leveled up, it felt like I was getting stronger as Spider-Man, and I could give him new skills, using these skill points, and make him either good at defending or good at attacking, or both at the same time sometimes. I enjoyed the skill trees that this game actually gives you, because it opens up a lot of different freedoms to play as Spider-Man. And now on to one of the biggest questions of the game, probably the biggest question of the game: how is the story? Well, I'm happy to report that the story in this game is actually really good. It's cheesy, but it's good. And it's okay that it's cheesy because it's Peter Parker, it's Spider-Man, it's supposed to have a little cheese in it. I mean, he's supposed to be an awkward nerd at times, right? Well, awkward nerds can be cheesy. But it's more than just that. It's a good story. It's well written and well acted by the voice actors. And that's actually a really good thing, considering a lot of superhero games of late have had crap stories. Spider-Man hits the nail on the head with its story, as it shows you Peter Parker and Spider-Man's life at the same time. It makes you excited to meet the villains, and then to see the villain outside of their uniform of being a villain. One of the coolest villains in this game, one of my favorite villains, is Dr. Octopus. And in this game, you have more of a relationship with him as a professor than you do as a villain. He is Peter's mentor in this game, and I love that aspect, knowing where his character is going to go, and seeing the relationship between them outside of their suits. It's probably the best superhero story in a video game that I've ever played. And that's high praise, because I have played a lot of superhero games. So Spider-Man gets a really good point for that. Another big question about this game, of course, was going to be Spider-Man's way of traveling, his web slinging. In past games, they've tried to do it. Some of them have done it, some of them haven't. But in this game, I think that the web slinging is perfect. It is the funnest way to get around the city, and it's probably the funnest part about the game. I loved slinging around the city. It made you feel so much like Spider-Man, getting so much velocity, using your web to swing around a building, jump from rooftop to rooftop. You can even wall crawl on this game. They got it perfect. The web slinging in this game, bar none, is the best web slinging of any Spider-Man game ever. Of course, I didn't talk about everything that's in this game. I don't want to spoil everything, but there's so much to do in this game. So many side missions, so many main story missions, collectibles, suits that you can get. Everything in this game is a joy to play, and it doesn't feel repetitive at all, which is a good thing, because if it was repetitive, I probably would have knocked it down a few points. All in all, the core gameplay is fantastic. The graphics are amazing. Playing as Spider-Man feels like you're actually playing as Spider-Man. I did run into a few bugs and glitches here and there. The game crashed on me a couple times, but really nothing game-breaking, really nothing that'll take away from your experience. All of it can be rectified with a patch. But this is a must-buy and a solid 9 out of 10. I'd give it a 10 out of 10 if it wasn't for all the QuickTime events and, of course, the bugs and glitches. But it is a solid high 9 out of 10, the possible highest 9 out of 10 that I can give it. It is a must-buy for any video game fan, any Spider-Man fan. If you love games like this, go buy it, because you're not going to be wasting your money. This game will give you so many hours of playtime and enjoyment. And it also wants you to play through it multiple times. So my final say is this game is a must-buy, 9 out of 10. And thank you for watching. This has been a Reign of Iron review, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe.